call to order the first meeting of the House Select Committee on the State's Role in Immigration Policy. And I'd like to introduce the Sergeants in Arms, Red Young Bay, Fred Hines, and Bill Bass. We have our committee clerk today is Carla Farmer. Our staff is Dr. Shohan, Dan Stanley, and Carol McCraw. And I'm going to ask the committee members, and we do have a few on the way, so we don't take any votes today, probably, but we will have a quorum in just a minute, if we had to. Please fill out and sign your per diem forms, and the sergeants and arms will pick those up momentarily. Please leave your folders when you leave the room. Leave your folders with your name on it. And the information on the left side, all the other information is yours to take with you if you wish. If you take your folder, your name is on it, and our clerk will track you down. You're going to hear a charge to the committee in just a moment from our staff member, Drupti. But my goal is a thorough, objective, dispassionate look at what is working in North Carolina, what can be improved, and what is in the best interest of the citizens of North Carolina. And I'd like to ask if Chairman Warren has any comments. Okay. First order of business would be the approval of our budget, but we've added 2 members since this budget was done. I believe due to the fact we'll have probably fewer than 6 meetings, we'll be under this budget, but in the interest of accuracy, we are going to delay that until the next meeting, approval of our budget, because we have added 2 more members, but there's no doubt in my mind that we will be well below our budget because of having fewer than 6 meetings. Okay, our first presenter and our first speaker is Dr. Shohan from our able staff here at the General Assembly. And she's going to review the committee charge, and she's going to open up with her other staff members, Dan Stanley and Carol McCraw, open it up to share the legislation that has already passed the General Assembly here in North Carolina, and also review any pending and introduced bills from the 2011 legislative session.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you'll look at the authorizing letter from the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the committee charge is in section 3, and it's fairly broad. It basically states that the committee may examine the state's role in immigration policy, including the effectiveness of laws already in effect which pertain to immigration, as well as best practices in other states. The committee is authorized to submit an interim report on the results of the study, including any proposed legislation on or before May 1, 2012, which would be the beginning of the short session of the biennium, and the committee would have to submit its final report on the results of the study, including any proposed legislation prior to the convening of the 2013 General Assembly by filing the report on or before December 31, 2012, and the committee terminates upon the filing of its final report. Thank you. Now I'm going to, committee members should have 2 documents in their folders. One lists out the major North Carolina legislation related to immigration. Going back to about 2006, when we did a review of prior legislation, we were not able to find anything that really affected immigration laws per se, or immigration policy per se, prior to that year. So it's a fairly short historical view, I suppose. And then the second document is bills that were introduced in this General Assembly that are pending and were introduced. So we'll take a look at the first document dealing with immigration legislation related to immigration that has passed, and I'm not going to read this to you verbatim because you can do that, and I'll try to hit the highlights. In 2006, the General Assembly did mandate that newly hired employees of public agencies, that the agencies verify their work authorization through the E-Verify system. The E-Verify system, of course, is the system that's in place by the federal government. I believe is operated by the Department of Homeland Security to verify legal status in the country. And that provision did not apply, does not apply to contractors or subcontractors with the public agencies. In 2006, there was a change in the statutes that permitted local law enforcement to participate in the 287G program, which the committee will hear about shortly, and they'll provide more in-depth information about that program. There was some concern at that time that there was a prohibition on dual office holding, and because these officers are sworn in as federal officers as well, that there could be some issue, but the legislation clarified that, and I know no issues that have resulted because of that. And then the third piece of legislation from 2006 required that applicants for driver's licenses, learner's permits, and ID cards have to provide a valid social security number, except for those that were in the country for a limited duration who had a valid visa of a limited duration, where the license would then be tagged to the expiration of the visa. Prior law to that had allowed applicants to present individual taxpayer ID numbers as alternatives, but that was changed. In 2007, there was legislation which required administrators of county jails and local confinement facilities and various other confinement facilities to attempt to determine whether the persons confined and charged with felonies or impaired driving offenses were lawfully present in the U.S. If the determination could not be made, then the administrator, where possible, had to make a query of the person's status through the Federal Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, ICE, which is under DHS, Homeland Security, and also alert the Department of Homeland Security of the person's status and confinement. And in the budget bill that year, $750,000 was appropriated to the Sheriff's Association for technical assistance and training to be used with immigration enforcement issues. In 2008, there was legislation that was passed that allowed for the limited release of inmates from prison for specifically for deportation. So it allowed some conditional release into ICE custody of inmates that met specific conditions outlined in statute. And so they would not continue to be in a North Carolina prison and would be released into ICE custody and deported back to their home country. And then in the 2011 session, this past session, E-Verify was made mandatory for local governments and for some private employers. Counties and municipalities have to use E-Verify now for all new employees beginning October 1, 2011. And then the legislation also requires private employers with more than 25 employees to use E-Verify with staggered implementation based on the number of employees. The law will be fully effective for private employers with 25 or more employees by July 1, 2020. And it does provide for penalties for failure to use E-Verify. There's a process for private citizens to file complaints and for the Commission of Labor to investigate full hearings and enforcement. So that's a review of legislation that has passed over the past decade or so. And then the second document that you've got is a list of the bills that we could find that are pending or introduced for this biennium. The first subgroup is a list of bills that are pending, and we're using that to mean that they cross from one chamber to the other. So, for example, House Bill 33, which prohibits consular documents from serving as a basis for determination of identity or residency for state and local government purposes. It's a House bill that is in the Senate Rules Committee, and it would basically adding these sections prohibits judicial officers, law enforcement officers, and other government officials and local governments from accepting consular documents as proof of a person's identity or residency, and makes appropriate changes in various statutes. Second pending legislation is Senate Bill 205, which is now in the House Rules Committee, and it requires specified documents to be presented as proof of eligibility for public benefits, and it enumerates a list of documents that would be acceptable for applicants for federal public benefits and state or local public benefits they would have to present in support of their application. Requires a sworn affidavit as to the document's authenticity, and it does make a misdemeanor for an employee of an agency that administers a public benefit to fail to report violations of the federal organization law discovered during the course of administering the benefit. So the third pending bill is Senate Bill 303, which is now in the House Transportation Committee, which requires driver's licenses of limited duration, such as the ones that are tied to a visa of a different limited duration, would have to bear a distinguishing mark on their face to designate him as such, to designate him as different than other driver's licenses. And then there were a number of other bills that were introduced in the 2011 session that did not make crossover. We are not stating that they are or are not eligible. It's just that they did not move from one chamber to the other, so we're not making a determination on eligibility. House Bill 11 is in the House Education Committee. It prohibits undocumented aliens from attending community college or public universities in North Carolina. House Bill 198, which is also in the House Education Committee, requires institutions of higher ed to report alien attendance lapses to the federal government. So a lapse of more than 10 consecutive school days of a student if an alien student is absent, would have to be reported. And then there are two bills that were very similar, House Bill 343, which is in the House Judiciary Subcommittee, and Senate Bill 604, which is in the Senate Rules Committee, enact, for lack of a better term, sort of Arizona-style comprehensive immigration changes. So they are sort of a wide, they address a wide number of different issues, from prohibiting sanctuary policies, requiring law enforcement to check immigration status of persons who are lawfully stopped, criminalizing failure to carry alien registration documents, criminalizing transporting, concealing, harboring, removing undocumented aliens, e-verify use by various parties. So fairly comprehensive changes dealing with immigration. Let's see. Senate Bill 179 is also in the Senate Rules Committee, and it would make it a misdemeanor to violate the federal laws which require aliens to complete and carry registration documents. And then finally, Senate Bill 204 is in the Senate Rules Committee, and it makes, it requires county municipalities to use E-Verify, which was obviously passed in the other bill that I mentioned earlier. And then the remainder of the bill prohibits state agencies, counties, municipalities, and entities required to report to the Department of Administration on contract purchases from contracting with any contractor unless the contractor verifies that they are using E-Verify. So that is a review of the bills that are currently in the General Assembly this time.